I'm your host, Eric Smith, and today I'm talking about Doctor Strange, The Fate of Dreams by Devon Grayson, and this is from Marvel Publishing. First of all, like all of their original novels that they've been putting out lately, this is set firmly within the comic book universe. Even though it came out to coincide with the Doctor Strange movie, it is uh, definitely in the comic book world, not the movie world. So it's Doctor Strange. That's why he doesn't look like Benedict Cumberbatch, I suppose. So some weird stuff is going on in the world in this story. Some strange, violent outbursts from normal people. Um, just sort of people getting out of control. And so there's this dream researcher, Sharanya Misra. Not sure about the pronunciation. Sharanya Misra comes to Doctor Strange because she was doing some research with prisoners and doing dream research. And at one point, they all woke up and then killed each other. But they were shouting Doctor Strange's name. So she comes to Doctor Strange and lays things out for him. He starts to look into it, and it turns out that the dream realm, it appears, is under attack. And so Doctor Strange and Sharanya have to team up with Nightmare, one of Doctor Strange's oldest enemies. They have to team up and try to save the dream realms. So that's your setup. And now, first of all, I'm a big Doctor Strange fan, have been for a long, long time. So not only was I excited for the movie, but I was excited for a new Doctor Strange novel. I do have one from back in the early 80s that I enjoy quite a lot. But it's always nice to get something new. And this story, for anyone who reads the comics, it is definitely set very close to what is currently going on in the comics. The latest volume of Doctor Strange, it feels like it's maybe like right before what went on at the beginning of the latest volume of Doctor Strange. For anyone who reads that comic, there was in the first story arc, there was an attack on magic. And I think there's no reference to that or the aftermath of that, so I think this has to be right before that. Not that it really matters. But it still very much feels like those stories because there's the whole thing like Doctor Strange's refrigerator sort of being a doorway to hell. And the way his Sanctum Sanctorum is portrayed in this latest volume of the comics is how it's portrayed here. The bar with no door is in here. There are some cameos from some characters, some great, very little, but still great cameos, characters I love in here. And again, which sets it firmly in the comic book world. And I like that about these because pretty much all of these new Marvel novels have, I think they have some pretty decent cameos, which is one of the greatest things about the Marvel Universe. You know, the way everybody shares the world, and you can have just characters showing up here and there. I guess, DC does it too, but Marvel tends, I don't know, it just feels like Marvel does it better. Hey, that's me. I'm a Marvel guy, although DC's growing on me. But anyway, so that's sort of the setting. Again, if you're familiar with the past 12 issues, I collect the comic, and I could tell you specifically which issue they're up to. But if you're familiar with that, then you're gonna recognize a lot of things in here. But as for the story itself, so Doctor Strange, it's Doctor Strange from the comics. You have Wong, and the interaction between the two, again, very much the same flavor as what's going on in the comics right now. Um, Great chemistry between the two. There's a certain, as dire as some things can get, there's still a certain playfulness sometimes to Doctor Strange, especially when he's dealing with Wong or when he's dealing with the house, the Sanctum Sanctorum. Um, Sharanya Misra is our gateway into the story. She's the normal human that's been pulled into these supernatural, bizarre events. Um, so she's us. She's the everyman in the story. And the first quarter, if that, is Earth. And then we get into they go to the dream realms, and that's where things really take off. And it's, uh, there are different sections of the dream realms. And as I said, it's under attack. I don't want to go into too much detail about what's going on, but it is not good for the dream realms or the masters of those realms. Nightmare, the character, is the ruler of Nightmare, the subsection of the dream realms, and we're going to visit other realms and meet other rulers. Um, but and we're going to get, interestingly, some a look at the Doctor Strange's past. Uh, Way back before he was even a surgeon. We're going to look at him when he was a kid. I don't know how much of this is was made for the book and how much of it was taken from the comics. I've read a lot of old Doctor Strange. I'm back into Doctor Strange, but there is a point where, I mean, I haven't read everything ever written, every Doctor Strange comic ever. So I don't know if this is straight from the brain of Devon Grayson or if it's aspects from other stories. But it's interesting to me. It's very interesting. We get to see his family when he was a kid, where he came from, essentially. And it all plays into, since this is all in the dream realms, it deals with his hopes and fears and guilt and all sorts of other things. And one of the aspects, again, not giving anything away here, there's a young girl who is somehow involved in all of this that they discover. So, of course, Nightmare is from the dream realms, so he's there. And Doctor Strange can go to the dream realms himself, and this young girl can go to the dream realms. So they're all sort of there and really in danger. They could physically be hurt, destroyed, whatever. Whereas Misra, Dr. Misra, essentially, I think she's a doctor, she is there because she went to sleep and they brought her in. So she's not technically in any physical danger because her body isn't there, just her. She's just dreaming, and so she's there. That's where you go when you dream. So that's interesting. As a dreamer, she has power because people can control dreams sometimes. So they do have to remind her a few times. No, you're dreaming. You can do things here. It's not. Doctor Strange is actually there performing magic. She's just manipulating dreams, as some people can do. But a lot of it, a huge chunk of the book, is in the dream realms, and it's really interesting. There's obviously obvious differentiation between the realms, the way they're presented, the way the denizens of those realms are. And I mean, that's one of the cool things about Doctor Strange, is that you can go into these weird territories, these other dimensions, these other places, and have really weird stuff going on. Um, so it's a lot. If you're a Doctor Strange fan, I think you're really gonna like this. if you're not that familiar with the character, it's not a bad introduction. I don't think you really need to know anything about the character to pick up this book and read it and enjoy it. I think everything you need to know is going to be in here. Um, so you don't have to have ever read the comics before. You could go in blind. All you need is going to be in this book. So I'll give you my rating. And I know what you're thinking. Those of you who are familiar with the character, you're probably thinking, oh, he just went with the Eye of Agamotto, because that's the way to go. But no, I decided to go with something a little different. I don't know how well this is going to show up, but I went with the Wand of Watum, or however you'd say it. But I went with 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5 Wands of Watum for Doctor Strange, The Fate of Dreams. It's very entertaining. Not the, I mean, not that I'm. When I read it and decided how to review it, I wasn't comparing it to the other new Marvel novels. So when I say not the best, but definitely not the worst, that didn't affect my review. That's just a part of what I'm saying now. Definitely entertaining. It's a good Doctor Strange story. I mean, 4 out of 5 is not a bad way to go. That's not a bad rating. So, sorry, I was looking at something. I got distracted by something on the back. But and there's nothing. There's no picture. Oh, and speaking of pictures, there are some good illustrations in here. Chris Bacala. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce his name, but he's the artist on Doctor Strange right now, and there are plenty of illustrations from him in here, and then there are some from other artists. But lots of really cool illustrations of not just Doctor Strange, but the dream dimensions and Nightmare and other things, which is always fun. Again, Doctor Strange has always been a very visually interesting comic book. And if you've seen the movie, you know how visually crazy that movie is. So, Devon Grayson does a pretty good job of conveying that in a book that's not in a prose novel. Again, there are a few illustrations in here, but Devon Grayson's got to carry the load of building that visual picture in your mind, and she does a pretty darn good job of it. So that's Doctor Strange: The Fate of Dreams. And again, I mean, if you liked the movie and you want more, and you don't want to get into the whole buying comic books and stuff, I mean, there's always trade paperback collected editions you can pick up. But maybe pick this up, give it a read. It's not going to be exactly the same as the movie, but it's going to give you some Doctor Strange. If you're a fan of Doctor Strange, definitely pick this up. And if you're just curious, if you just want to read something kind of wild and out there and fun, pick this up, read it. It's in hardback right now. They usually eventually come out in paperback, I think. So that's it. I'll have a link for the book in the description below. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put them in the comments below if I pronounced the Wand of Watum wrong, or drew it incorrectly, although I did use a reference picture, although there were a bunch of different ones. Anyway, any comments, questions, corrections, put them in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning, because we have good manners here at the Low Budget Review Show. Please like, share, and subscribe. So that's it for this episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I have been your host, Eric Smith, and until next time, read more books.